Echoes of the Killing Fields. Welcome to ThaiLocalTales, the podcast that takes you on a journey through Thailand's legends, folklore, and the lesser-known stories of its history. I'm Captain Piroj, your guide on this adventure. So sit back, relax, and let's begin today's story. Today I will recount an important event that will serve as a reminder of the meaning of unity. Because the violent division of Cambodia resulted in great tragedy for the people, especially events that gave rise to the word Hell's Prison, the killing fields. Something the world must remember. Let's listen to what happened in Cambodia that day. At that time, Cambodia was divided into two factions. The Cambodians supported by the United States, led by General Lon Nol, and the Khmer Rouge, which was supported by communist groups and led by Pol Pot. People of the same nation have turned against each other with fierce hostility. On the 17th of April, 1975, the Khmer Rouge seized control of Phnom Penh, and the Lon Nol government, supported by the United States, was defeated. On the day the Khmer Rouge forces liberated Phnom Penh, the people took to the streets to cheer and welcome the Khmer Rouge soldiers, as they were fed up with the corrupt Lon Nol government that had caused suffering and hardship to the Cambodian people. But then the Cambodian man realized his hopes were dashed because he encountered something far more horrifying. Cambodia transitioned to a socialist regime, and after establishing a provisional people's assembly to draft a new constitution, it became a communist system of government. King Norodom resigned as head of state in 1976. Pol Pot and Eiamchan, the communist leaders, formed a new government and changed the country's name to Democratic Kampuchea. The Khmer Rouge occupied Cambodia from April 1975 until January 1979, a total of 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days under their control. These days, under the Khmer Rouge, claimed the lives of 2 to 3 million Cambodians, some killed by massacres, others by starvation, hardship, and disease. It was the most heartbreaking and tragic event. Under the rule of the Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, Tamak and Miet Duc were the assassins. The monument to the most notorious Khmer Rouge massacre is the Tuol Sleng prison under the direction of Miet Duc. Later, even high-ranking leaders of the Khmer Rouge were brought here and killed as a sacrifice to appease Pol Pot's paranoia. Phnom Penh became a ghost town. People were relocated from the city to build new societies in the countryside. Prince Sihanouk and Princess Monique were imprisoned in the palace by the Khmer Rouge. Prince Sihanouk's 2 sons, 3 daughters, and 11 grandchildren disappeared without a trace. It is believed they either met a tragic end at the hands of the Khmer Rouge or were possibly executed. Many of Princess Monique's relatives suffered the same fate, which greatly saddened Prince Sihanouk. Now, Tuol Sleng prison. This was originally a school museum. The Khmer Rouge used it as a place to interrogate, detain, and torture intellectual prisoners. Approximately 17,000 prisoners were killed, averaging about 100 murders per day. This massacre museum consists of 3 buildings. In front of these 3 buildings is the tomb of the last 14 political prisoners. These prisoners were brutally murdered in various ways. Near the cemetery, a memorial to the massacre has been erected as a memorial. The rooms on the ground floor of Building A are single cells used to confine high-ranking prisoners such as ministers and senior government officials. The room was fairly spacious, with an old bed and chains, tattered clothes, and a small box for urination and defecation. There were also drops of blood under the bed. In each room, gruesome photographs of the 14 murderers hung on the walls. Some bodies had their heads severed, others had their temples squeezed with pliers, and some were hoisted up and lowered into water tanks to suffocate them. Outside, in the courtyard by the walkway, the pulleys and water jars that were used in these cruel activities still remain. In Building C, there were rows of photographs of the murderers, including women, men, young people, and the elderly. Among those killed here were engineers, doctors, teachers, ministers, and diplomats. After ousting Lon Nol's government from power, the Khmer Rouge Paul Poetry issued a proclamation calling on learned and capable intellectuals to return and develop the nation. A considerable number of intellectuals who have lived abroad, whether in exile or since ancient times, have returned to their homeland with the hope of contributing to the reconstruction of the nation, which has suffered for so long, and restoring it to unity and prosperity. They were then arrested at the airport and brought to this prison, tragically sacrificing their lives, rich in intellectual resources, to the Khmer Rouge leaders who considered intellectuals enemies of the people. In the last room of Building B, hundreds and thousands of skulls are arranged to form a map of Cambodia. The Rhombus Lake and the Mekong River are stained red, like streams of blood. Everyone who witnessed it stood stunned, tears welling up in their eyes, expressing their deepest feelings without needing any words. The images depicting various methods of torturing prisoners were later painted by former inmates who were imprisoned in this jail. A large pile of the deceased's clothes was stacked in a closet, along with a small chair for the prisoners to sit on for photographs to create their records. Perhaps the suffering spirits of some Cambodians still linger here, or perhaps not. It's unknown. In broad daylight, sounds of talking and crying can sometimes be heard. All the officers frequently experience such incidents to the point that it is considered normal. 15 kilometers from the center of Phnom Penh is Trong Ai, or the Killing Fields, another genocide site which was the largest camp and closest to Phnom Penh. Trong Ai is a large open field. In front of it is a 10-story glass crematorium filled with piles of skulls. The lower floors are stacked with the deceased's clothing. Some skulls had gunshot wounds, while others showed signs of being struck with a sharp object, whether an axe or a knife. In the vast grassland behind the crematorium, there are 50 long, deep pits, about 1.5 meters deep, where 25,000 Cambodian villagers and laborers were rounded up, killed, and pushed into the pits. Some graves had signs reading, "Graduation of 116 headless bodies," and another was labeled, "Graduation of 100 naked children and women." Fragments of cloth and bone were still mixed in the comment. Soil. A heartbreaking sight. Eiamchan. He was a prisoner at Tuol Sleng prison at that time, and he was one of the few who miraculously survived that prison. While the Khmer Rouge were blindfolding him and leading him to be executed in the forest of Kampong Speo, about 30 kilometers from Phnom Penh, Vietnamese forces invaded and liberated Phnom Penh. The soldiers guarding him for execution escaped. Eiamchan miraculously survived the chaos. Eiamchan recounted that if the Khmer Rouge saw religious statues, they would shoot them or destroy them by throwing them into the river, because they did not want the Cambodian people to revere them. Upon entering this prison, everyone is photographed, their personal information is recorded, and they are interrogated. They are asked if they are Cambodian rebels, if they sided with Vietnam, or if they collaborated with France. Everyone is forced to answer. If you didn't answer, you would be killed by being electrocuted. If you answered that you love your country and Popo, you would be interrogated again, asking why you were captured if you love your country so much. The interrogators usually didn't believe such an answer. If the Khmer Rouge found you guilty, they would execute you. Eiamchan's friends in prison were disappearing one by one. People were constantly coming and going. In winter, there are no blankets. Some wear tattered clothes, while others have no clothes at all and have to sleep naked. He, himself, was confined to a narrow, solitary cell in Building C. He recounted, "I was chained up in my room. I didn't shower for 3 full years. Then the Khmer Rouge soldiers would pour water over me, making me soaking wet and itchy all over. We only got 2 meals a day, mostly rice porridge with just broth. We also had containers for defecating and urinating, which the Khmer Rouge soldiers would empty for us. Sometimes they were too lazy to empty them, so they'd just leave them on the ground. It was messy and smelly, but we had to endure it. It wouldn't let us walk around except when called in for questioning. We weren't allowed to speak to anyone or even look at each other. Anyone who resisted was beaten. If anyone got sick, they were just left to die. I was abused. They forced me to drink a lot of water, then step on me to make me vomit. Sometimes, they would hit me with the butt of a gun until my ears bled. Other times, they would shock me with electric wires, which has left me with mental health issues. We had to wait in bed for the time they would call us in for questioning. They would interrogate us 3 times a day, in the morning, in the evening, and at 2 a.m. every day. When they were leading us out of the room, they would blindfold us. On the day they were to kill us, they would instruct us to say that we had collaborated with America to destroy Cambodia. I once saw Khmer Rouge soldiers kill a woman. She refused to answer their questions, so they used a knife to cut her flesh into pieces to force her to answer and then brutally murdered her. I saw it at that time because I was sculpting a model of the character Fopo near where the interrogation took place, sculpting it based on the photographs they showed me. I once tried to commit suicide. I used a mosquito net to hang myself, but Khmer Rouge soldiers saw me and beat me. Many people wanted to escape, but the security was very tight. I was very scared and constantly paranoid. If I did anything wrong, they would arrest me and kill me. I was utterly hopeless. Every night I'd imagine waking up to die. I desperately wanted to die. Yet, I also wanted to endure the torment. In prison, I was so thin, just skin and bones. My limbs were withered and emaciated. I wasn't much different from an animal. Eiamchan recounted that some of his fellow inmates who survived were tortured by having their fingernails driven in while still alive. After the Khmer Rouge era, he came to work as a museum officer at the Tuol Sleng Museum and, together with a friend named Van, who had his nails hammered, painted murals depicting the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge, which are displayed to the world at this museum. He was deeply moved every time he had to answer questions from foreigners about their agonizing nightmares. Often, in broad daylight, he would see the ghosts of his murdered friends weeping, or relive images of the Khmer Rouge leading people to their deaths, the air filled with the cries of both children and adults. These hallucinations left a deep-seated fear in his mind that persisted to this day. Eventually, he quit his job and became an independent sculptor of Uncle Rit, selling his work to tourists and earning enough to support himself. Uncle Rit. This is another story from a Cambodian man. The war not only left indelible scars in his memory, but also left marks on Uncle Rit's face and body. Uncle Rit's face was pitted with oozing fluid, resembling skin cancer. He also experienced itching on his face and body, a consequence of the chemical rain that American planes dropped on the remote province 17 years ago. The orange raindrops falling from the sky, as they hit the trees, glowed brightly like the lights of fireflies. The orange rain fell upon Uncle Rit and his 11 friends, causing their skin to glow. At first, no one paid attention, but later they began to itch and suffer excruciating pain. Uncle Rit's face was scarred, with traces of both pus and blood, causing him shame and a deep-seated insecurity. When I went to see a doctor who was Russian, he said that all the tissue cells in that area were dead and there was no way to heal it. Now, all my friends who were exposed to Agent Orange with me have died. I'm the only unlucky one who got hit on the face. The others got it on their bodies. I'm embarrassed and don't dare go anywhere, especially in the summer when I sweat. It gets even more itchy. I'm afraid it might turn into skin cancer. Uncle Rit lost his wife and child while his wife was traveling in a van to Stung Teng, a province near Ratanakili. She died along with their 1-year-old daughter when the van was robbed, shot at, and set on fire, killing everyone inside. Many people speculate that the Khmer Rouge were responsible, But Uncle Rit believes it was more likely robbers who needed money and then blamed the Khmer Rouge. I'm not angry because I don't know which side did it. My wish is for all the factions of Cambodia to unite and work together to develop the country, he said. Uncle Rit's hopes are probably the same as everyone else's, but whether he will ever see true peace on this land in his lifetime is a matter for the future that remains unanswered. Another person's name is John the soldier, is blind and has amputated legs. He is a private soldier who receives a monthly salary of 9 baht from the government. The former soldier recounted that he joined the army at the age of 14 when the government first conscripted him to fight against the Khmer Rouge. Some volunteered though, because at least being a soldier provided a meager salary and at least 3 meals a day. The image of young Cambodian soldiers, still referred to as boys, carrying rifles and stepping onto the battlefield to fight their compatriots, is a scene from the past that has deeply affected many Thais. John Triang said that if Khmer Rouge soldiers invaded a village, they would destroy everything. Any woman who wasn't pretty would be shot, while those who were pretty would be raped. Nowadays, he helps his wife raise the children and does some work, but he relies on touch because he is blind. If my eyes weren't damaged and my legs weren't disabled, I would want to join the army again and kill the Khmer Rouge, John Triang emphasized, fueling the undying rage in his heart. Have Grandma Suan, the man who is over 70 years old, said he was born in Battambang province or Pibul Songkhram province. The reason this city has such a Thai name is because Field Marshal Plaek Phibun Songkhram once built a Thai temple in Battambang called Wat Somso. However, before the inauguration ceremony could be held, the French invaded and seized Battambang. My grandmother's life had been through many hardships until one night she remembers it was about 20 years ago when Khmer Rouge soldiers in black uniforms carrying rifles stormed into the village, firing bullets and causing many injuries and deaths. The grandmother's husband was tricked by Khmer Rouge soldiers who promised to take him to welcome Prince Sihanouk along with other villagers, but instead he was killed. Even after seeing her husband's body, the grandmother didn't dare cry because it meant she would become the next target. Grandma Suan recounted that the Khmer Rouge soldiers forced them to move into small huts, with 2 families living in each house. At home, everyone was forbidden from locking their doors 24 hours a day. My grandmother once saw Khmer Rouge soldiers take women away, rape them, and then kill them. They would stab them with a sharp knife and extract their bile to drink with alcohol. My grandmother had to secretly steal water hyacinth, flowers, and yams to boil and eat to fill her stomach. If the soldiers saw her, she would be killed. There were informants who kept a record of who broke the law. After killing them, sometimes the bodies would be dumped in the mountains. Those mountains you see are filled with the bones of thousands of murder victims. After recounting her past loss, the grandmother pointed to the majestic mountain behind the house. It was truly a graveyard of death. Every elderly person in the nursing home has gone through the same tragic journeys as every Cambodian. We can only hope that this land of tragedy will become a land fertile with love, unity, and solidarity, a Cambodia that enjoys freedom and independence in the future. It won't be long now before Asia can unite as a nation of goodwill and solidarity, achieving peace in the future. Thank you for listening to Thai Local Tales. I'm Captain Piroj. Until our next journey together, take care, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next episode.